Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the $1 Million Case Study, Season 4, episode number 11, running out of fingers now. I'm your host, Greg Mercer. I'm joined by my co-host, Rolando Galeana. Rolando, what's up, man?
Hey, how's it going, Greg? How's it going, Freedom Builders?
I'm doing fantastic, and today we're talking about a subject that is not super exciting. However, we're going to try to make it as fun as possible, and it's important nonetheless. Today, we're going to be talking about tax and legal structures. But before we dive into the meat of that, Rolando, give us a little update on the Jungle Slider keyboard trays.
Yeah, so as you know, we've gone into production. So just as of last week, we went into production. So now it's just the waiting game and waiting for the product to arrive at Amazon. Can't wait for that to happen.
So at this point, Rolando, how often are you speaking with your sales rep at the factory?
It's slowed down a bit. In the early stages, it's regularly, but now it's not as often.
Okay, does he or she give you any kind of updates, or do you have to ask for them, or give us a little more insight of what's happening behind the scenes?
Yeah, one of the major things was getting Flexport involved and reaching out to my manufacturer to establish that relationship. So that's been established. And now the next thing really is, as they're going into production, they are going to provide me photos of the product as it's going through in each step of the way. So that is a vital piece of communication.
Excellent. I'm excited to see those photos. It's always fun to get to see those pictures and see your actual product and it going through the production line. It's exciting stuff, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And our manufacturer has been phenomenal. They've been great at communicating with us every step along the way. And I think it all starts off with creating that relationship early on.
Great. Thanks for that, Rolando. Before we dig into the meat of today's episode, I just want to let you guys know that neither Rolando nor myself are attorneys or tax professionals. The information that we're sharing with you guys throughout this episode is just based off of our experiences over the years starting and growing Amazon businesses.
Hey, Greg, maybe we should invite Gregorio Esquire to join us today.
I don't think Gregorio Esquire is coming out today. I forgot to bring my suit with me to the office.
Now, we don't want you guys to feel overwhelmed, which is why this segment is focused on Amazon sellers and what it is that you need to get started right away. So we're going to cut through all the fluff and we're just going to cover and tackle the issues that you need to know.
And by the end of today's episode, you'll understand a little bit more about different legal entities and legal formations, whether or not you need one. And then we'll also be touching on two different tax topics, both sales tax and personal income tax. So let's get started with the most popular question, and that is, do I need an LLC?
Now, don't worry, Freedom Builders, because there is a written format of this so that you can follow along. If you head on over to junglescout.com/MDCS 4-11.
An LLC is a type of legal formation that is very easy and inexpensive to set up, and that's what makes it very popular for small businesses. Technically, you don't need an LLC to have an Amazon business. You can register for an Amazon account as a sole proprietor as long as you're a US citizen. If you live somewhere else besides the US or you're not a US citizen, then you will need a legal entity in order to register for an Amazon Seller Central account. The way I like to think about it is, if you are a US citizen and you are trying to figure out whether or not you want to form a legal entity, I think what most people do is they decide whether or not they're just exploring this opportunity or if they're ready to make this a serious business. If you're just exploring this opportunity and you're willing to take on a little bit of risk associated with it, then I think a lot of people deem that it's okay or acceptable with their tolerance of risk to just register for an Amazon Seller Central account as a sole proprietor and not set up an LLC at this point. You can always change your Amazon Seller Central account to a LLC or a different legal entity down the road, so that's always a possibility. If you are more serious about this and you're confident you want to make this a business for years to come, then I would just go ahead and set up a legal entity today, because it does make a few things a little bit easier and cleaner. Let's talk a little bit about the benefits of an LLC. First of all, an LLC stands for Limited Liability Corporation, and that gives you a little bit of an idea about what some of the benefits are. So forming an LLC kind of gives your business its own legal identity. In the eyes of the law, it's kind of a separate person that can own money or property or have a bank account or make agreements or sue people or even be sued. So it's kind of a separate entity from your personal self. Because of that, business creditors can't go after money or assets that aren't owned by your LLC. So your home or your bank account or your car or whatever else, they're protected and they're separate from this legal entity that has its own identity. By contrast, if you operate a sole proprietorship, you and the business aren't legally separate, and therefore everything you own is at risk. So this would be an extreme example, but let's pretend with our keyboard tray, if one of the clamps breaks and it falls off and it lands on someone's toe and it breaks their toe and they want to sue the company that made this keyboard tray. The chances of this happening, of course, are very rare, but let's say this did happen, then they would only be able to go after any of the assets that are held within our LLC. So maybe we have $5,000 in our bank account and we have 100 units of keyboard trays and inventory. That's what they would be able to go after and try to get that from us. They wouldn't be able to go after my house and my car and the money in my personal bank account. So it's its own legal identity, and it's separate from you as a personal identity when you form a legal entity like an LLC. Man, how many times did I say entity in there, Rolando? Maybe we should do a counter there.
1, 2, 3.
One other benefit, Greg, is that some factories or freight forwarders do require an LLC. However, not very many Chinese manufacturers require it.
Yeah, good point, Rolando. And I imagine the chat box right now is saying, hey, how come you're not talking about SCorps or C-Corps or partnerships or anything else? And there are other types of legal formations that you can use to create companies. SCorps are another popular option for small businesses. However, they are more difficult to both set up and maintain, and they only have tax benefits for a certain group or a certain population of people. So I wouldn't recommend that anyone goes out there and creates an SCorp right away. Instead, I think the easiest option is to create an LLC and then talk to a tax professional down the road and decide whether or not you'd want to change that into an SCorp. So let's go ahead and answer some of the common questions about LLCs, limited liability companies. First of all, one of the popular questions is, do I need to register my LLC in my local state? And the way that I understand this is if you have a local presence in your state, so if I was starting an ice cream shop and I was creating a storefront in my local state, then I would need the LLC to be formed in my respective state. If you have an internet-based business like we do with an Amazon account, my understanding is it doesn't really matter what state that's formed in. There might be a few weird states like California or New York, I imagine, that require you to form them in your respective states. But for most states, I know in my experience, I've been able to just open up like a Delaware or a Wyoming LLC. Those are two very popular states to do so. And I've been able to do that no matter where I was living at. I personally have had a bias towards Wyoming LLCs in the past, and this is mainly because they are very easy and inexpensive to set up, and they're only $50 a year to maintain. So we'll include a link below to a website that I've used in the past and had pretty good success with. It's called wyomingagents.com/LLC. It's $150 for them to go ahead and set one up for you. You can set these up yourself. However, it's $100 to do it yourself or $150 just to pay someone to do it, and they get it done the same day. So for me, it's always been worth just that extra $50 to have someone else knock this out for me. You can also check junglemarket.com for legal entity formation services. On junglemarket.com, there's a whole host of pre-vetted Amazon experts that are used to working with Amazon sellers, and they can provide the service for you.
Hey, Greg, what's up with the yearly $50 fee that they charge?
Yeah, that's going to vary from state to state, Rolando. However, the idea behind that is it's just a yearly maintenance fee to keep your LLC active and in good health.
Awesome, Greg. I really appreciate that feedback. Do you happen to have any other tips for Amazon sellers? Maybe something that you've learned over the years?
Yeah, totally. So the first one is it doesn't really matter what your LLC's name is, okay? So a lot of people ask, does my LLC name have to be the same as my Amazon storefront name or my Amazon brand name? And the answer is no to both of those, okay? So I could just call it the Greg Mercer LLC, and then our Amazon name could be Jungle Creations, and our brand name could be Jungle Slider, and that's perfectly fine. I could also make them all the same. So our brand name could be Jungle Creations, our Amazon store name could be Amazon or Jungle Creations, and our LLC's name could be Jungle Creations, okay? So it doesn't really matter. So that's the first tip I have. The second tip is to go ahead and get a EIN number. You get this from the IRS's government website. It's free to do, and this is essentially your social security number for your business. So now that you have a business, which is an LLC, and this is a different identity than your personal self, the business needs a tax identification number. You'll need this for opening up your Amazon Seller Central account, opening a bank account under the legal entity's name, and ultimately for paying your taxes, unfortunately. The next tip I have is to keep all of your finances separate. For one, it just makes overall bookkeeping much easier. And two is in order to maintain the benefits that the LLC gives you, you cannot commingle personal and business activity too much, all right? So when I say that, the best thing to do is to go ahead and just open a bank account under your business's name. Go ahead and deposit some of your personal money into that bank account in order to fund this business to get started. And all future transactions should happen through this bank account that are related to your business. So when you're paying suppliers, you should pay them out of that bank account. When you're receiving deposits from Amazon, they should go into that bank account, and any other expenses associated with your business should come out of that bank account. This keeps it nice and neat and clean and total separate from your personal identity. And this also helps down the road if you ever want to sell your business or take on a partner or investments or anything else that has to do with your business there. It just makes it much more neat and cleaner that this is truly a business and not commingled with your personal self. The last tip that I have for you, Rolando, regarding the LLCs is just make sure you register all business accounts under that business name. So of course, your Amazon Seller Central account and your bank account, but also just other things like if you're buying domain names or if you open up a Shopify store or anything else, just make sure to register all of those under your legal entity, your LLC's name. And this again just helps with the liability protection, knowing that they are part of your business and not your personal identity.
All right, Greg, so quick summary of what you recommend.
I would first ask yourself, are you ready to take this business seriously? If so, I'd go ahead and create a legal formation. And an LLC is going to be appropriate for probably like 99% of the people watching this right now. If you're just testing the waters, you're trying to figure out the whole Amazon thing's right for you, and you're a US citizen, then you could choose not to form a legal entity and instead just go with a sole proprietorship. If you do want an LLC, you can easily get one online using a resource like the Wyoming agent that we gave earlier. After doing that, your next steps would be to register for a free EIN, and you can do that on the IRS website. And the most important of the tips that I gave would be to make sure to register all your accounts, like your Amazon account, with your LLC name. Lastly, I would make sure to open up the LLC its own bank account and try to keep all of your bookkeeping separate. And that about sums up as much as I know and recommend being a non-lawyer for Amazon sellers and the associated legal formations.
All right, Freedom Builders, we want to hear from you. So tell us, what's it going to be, an LLC or a sole proprietorship? Be sure to drop it in the comments below. Let's talk about my least favorite topic, taxes.
Oh no, not the dreaded tax topic. No, it's really not that bad. There's essentially two different types of taxes that I think you need to be familiar with and know about as an Amazon seller. So that is sales tax and income tax. So sales tax, what that is like if I were to go to a store right now and I were to buy a t-shirt, the label's marked $10. When I get to the cash register, it rings up as $10.50. That's because there'd be a 5% sales tax in that respective jurisdiction. Okay, so that sales tax obviously goes to the state or the county level or wherever instead of the store collecting that. And as a business owner, this is something you need to be aware of and mindful of. Now, it's a little bit more complicated than example I gave once you get into the world of online commerce and specifically Amazon. Because, I'm living in Austin, Texas right now. I'm shipping my goods to different warehouses around the country. They might be in California and Nevada and New York. And then Amazon's redistributing those. And then, the customers are buying from different states from all around the country. So it gets a lot more complicated, right? No longer am I just a ice cream store owner in the state of Texas and my customers are coming from Texas. No longer is it that clear cut. Now, after listening to all this and listening to the earlier part about forming legal entities, you're probably feeling pretty overwhelmed and maybe even a little discouraged. However, you actually don't need to feel that way. This isn't really that complicated of a subject once you start to understand it. And there's lots of software tools as well as service providers to help us navigate this part of the laws. By the end of today's episode, I would actually guarantee that you guys will know a lot more than probably most small business owners in America right now. The goal of this is just to give you a basic understanding of the big picture, and that way you guys can either do these different activities yourselves or realize that, hey, I should hire a service provider to help me with that portion of this particular topic. One other thing that I'll add to this is there's actually some huge tax benefits of being a small business owner. You can write off certain expenses like your internet connection and part of your home for your home office and other items that otherwise you might be paying for otherwise, but you wouldn't be able to get tax deductions for them. And when I say that, tax deductions, that just means on the amount of money that they cost, you no longer have to pay taxes on that portion of your income because they're now expenses. So there's actually some really nice tax benefits, even if you only have a very small business. So let's start with talking about sales tax and Nexus. You might be thinking, what is Nexus? I've heard people talk about this and it sounds like this scary thing. Nexus is the determining factor whether a presence or connection to a state is significant enough for you to be required to collect and remit sales tax. What this essentially means is what states do you as an Amazon seller need to collect and remit sales tax in? So Amazon will actually collect this sales tax for you, but then it's up to you to actually remit it to the respective states. And it's also up to you to tell Amazon which states they should be charging sales tax in for your particular products. Let me give you an example to try to make this a little bit easier. So I live in Austin, Texas. Now, I have a physical presence here, and this is the physical presence of my business. And if we sell to a consumer on Amazon that lives in Texas, to me, that's pretty clear cut that my business has physical presence here, and therefore we should collect sales tax in the state of Texas. Now, where it gets a little bit more confusing is when you sell goods to other states, and that's essentially what Nexus is. And the laws around this, most Amazon sellers and tax attorneys that I speak with say that the laws around this are a little bit of a gray area. Some people think it's very cut and dry and you should pay taxes in these different respective states. Other people will tell you that it is a gray area and it's not clear because the laws aren't written in a way that you're selling your goods through a platform like Amazon, and whether or not they're the merchant because they're storing your goods and shipping your goods and selling the goods on their channel, or whether or not you're the merchant. What I see most Amazon sellers do is they will collect and remit the state sales tax in their home state. Most Amazon sellers from whom I've spoken with, when they're just smaller, they don't do a Nexus study and figure out what other states they may be owning sales tax in, since it isn't super clear cut and is a little bit of a gray area. If you are a very risk adverse type person or your business is growing and getting quite a bit larger, you may want to do a Nexus study or use a tool like TaxJar to help you understand what other states you may owe sales tax in. On a more positive note, My personal opinion is within the next 12 to 18 months, I believe Amazon's going to be automatically collecting and remitting, which is the more important part, sales tax for you. So no longer will this ever be a headache for Amazon sellers.
Once again, thanks a lot, Greg, for giving a great explanation of Nexus, because it can get a little convoluted at times. I want to touch a little bit on income taxes, because the way that you're taxed as a business owner is very different from the way that you're taxed as a wage earner. And it does bring its own little perks and benefits. But the only way that you can be taxed as a business owner is on profit. Now, the goal is to be profitable, and so you probably will be liable for some taxes. But if you keep accurate books, you can offset that income or that profit with the expenses that you incur for managing your business. So for example, as you're setting up this LLC, well, guess what? You can write that off as a business owner. Any tools that you use, such as Jungle Scout, can be written off as a business owner. So as you can see, there's some real nice perks to being a business owner, because at the end of the day, you don't want to pay more than necessary to run your business. So maybe you have some great advice on what you do, Greg, as bookkeeping. I know you have a little secret that you want to share with us, so please do.
Good point, Rolando. The main thing to remember here is that you need to document all of the expenses that you incur as a business. Whatever expenses you have, this is money that you don't have to pay taxes on. So it's important that you don't forget about any expenses, otherwise you're just overpaying your taxes. If you're just getting started, let's say you only have one product on Amazon, you may just be able to keep track of all your income and expenses just with an Excel sheet. If you have a little bit more sophisticated business, or if Excel is your worst enemy, then you can use a tool like Fetcher to keep track of all of your income and expenses. Now, Fetcher is one of the tools in the Jungle Scout family. We built this a few years ago after personally experiencing all the headaches associated with proper bookkeeping and just profit analytics on Amazon in general. Let me give you a quick tour of the tool and show you a few more things that you need to be thinking about as an Amazon seller and keeping track of all your income and expenses. So right now I've landed on Fetcher's dashboard, and right away I can see some important numbers like how many sales I've made the past week, how many units I've sold, the costs associated with those, the profit, and we've wound up with about a 20% profit margin for this particular demo account. This is for our Jungle Sticks and Jungle Snugs, and Jungle Sticks actually had a really good day yesterday. In total, we sold 188 units just yesterday, and just in this past week, we've made $2,500, which works out to be about $10,000 a month, which is pretty sweet considering there's only 2 Amazon products. But I'm not here to show you about how well our Amazon products are doing. I want to show you guys how this can help you out with proper bookkeeping for your Amazon business. So Fetcher shows us a number of things like how well each of our individual products are selling, or what products are getting a lot of refunds, or the product breakdown on individual products, how many units individual products are selling per day or per week or per month. But for the purpose of this episode, we want to focus a little bit more on expenses. So Fetcher automatically imports all sales and expenses from Amazon. So a number of the Amazon expenses are going to be associated with things like our shipping. So for example, if we use Amazon's in-house shipping system, where we're using either their trucks or UPS to ship our goods from, let's say, Flexport's warehouse into Amazon, then Fetcher will automatically import those respective costs. It will also automatically import costs like our order fees, our pay-per-click fees, and any other expenses that were occurring on the Amazon platform. The only thing that Fetcher doesn't automatically import is just the cost of your goods. So what I can do is I can automatically add those costs right here on this page. So as you can see here, this is with our Jungle Sticks, and we've actually gotten a better deal on our Jungle Sticks as the years have gone on. So when we originally launched this product, we were paying $4.62 per unit, and now we're paying significantly less than this, and we've updated this cost each time our personal cost changes. Same thing, we have all of our costs associated with our Jungle Snugs in here. Fetcher automatically imports all of our reshipping data, which is shipping services through Amazon. And the only other thing we have to do is input our other expenses. So other expenses would be anything like photography or setting up your LLC or services purchased off the Jungle Market or the cost of other contract labor. Any of these other expenses that your business is incurring can be entered into other expenses. The reason why Fetcher is much nicer for Amazon sellers than something like QuickBooks is the fact that it automatically imports all of your Amazon sales and expense data, and you only have to enter a few of these lines. And then after that, Fetcher is really just set it and forget it, and you can just log in each week or each month or however often you choose to do so to see how your business is performing on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis. Fetcher will also give you a profit and loss statement so you can see exactly how many dollars you made in sales and in refunds, reimbursements, promotions like coupons. It will also show you all your fees associated with PPC or software subscriptions or order fees. It breaks out all these different things into a profit and loss statement, which you can then print out and give to your accountant, who will then use that to do your taxes at the end of the year.
Now that wraps up today's episode. So if you want to be entered to win in the Amazon Seller Seed Fund, then be sure to complete your action items. 1, set up an LLC. 2, get that EIN number. 3, set up a bank account so that you can keep your personal expenses separate from your business expenses. Remember, in order to be entered into the Amazon Seller Seed Fund, you'll need to use the hashtags MDCS Challenge as well as hashtag Freedom Builders. You could win up to $2,500, so why not?
And that wraps up the content for today's episode. Hit that subscribe button if you're enjoying the $1 Million Case Study, and give us a thumbs up if you've enjoyed this particular episode. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. See you, Rolando. Peace.
Keep crushing it, Freedom Builders.